Caleb, what's behind the seizure of this building housing an Islamic Culture Center?
Iran has opened a hand of friendship and diplomacy to the United States, wanting to resolve the hostility between the two countries. But the response of the U.S. and Israel to Iran's call for peace and negotiations has been hostility. And that's what we're seeing with this, this building seizure, the attacks on the new UN ambassador. It's all rooted in hostility. When Iran has made clear it wants peace with the United States and with other countries around the world, the U.S. seems to be committed to hostility toward the Islamic Republic of Iran.
The skyscraper had been accused by U.S. federal authorities of being a front to conceal Iranian assets, money laundering, violating sanctions on the country. They should know what they're talking about, shouldn't they?
Well, we absolutely cannot trust federal authorities in the United States. There's been a big effort by the FBI. There's been a big effort by the FBI and other federal institutions in the U.S. to attack people that have spoken out in defense of the Palestinians. Federal attorneys like Barry Jonas in Chicago have targeted anti-war activists and Palestinians. The leaders, the people who led the Holy Land Foundation, who did nothing more than feed Palestinian children, are now in prison. It's outrageous. So I absolutely think that the work of the federal prosecuting institutions, the FBI and others, is very political and is often very politically motivated. I don't think they're just acting purely in the interests of enforcing the law, and I think that may be the case. I don't know the specifics about this building, and I don't think those specifics are totally public. But there is a clear policy of aggression and hostility toward Iran, and that's what we're seeing playing out.
Just last week, President Obama signed legislation aimed at barring Iran's ambassador from serving at the UN over his alleged role in the 1979 takeover of the U.S. embassy in Tehran. What can we infer from that?
Well, all kinds of very extreme allegations have been made about Hamid Abu Talibi, the new UN ambassador for the Islamic Republic of Iran, but very little evidence has been presented about them. But, I mean, let's look at the facts. In 1979, the students in Iran took over the U.S. embassy because they said it was a center of U.S. spying operations against Iran. And everything has proven that they were correct. They were correct. The U.S. was using the embassy as a way to spy and engage in hostility and attempts to engage in aggression against the Islamic Republic of Iran. Just in 1979, until 1979, Iran had been ruled by a brutal U.S. dictator, the Shah, who tortured and murdered, all paid for by the United States and to benefit U.S. oil corporations. And the people of Iran rose up and acting as patriotic Iranians, rose up and overthrew this brutal dictator being forced on their country. And that's what happened. And these allegations about what role Abu Talibi played in the 1979 events need to be looked at in that context. It was the United States that has been engaged in aggression against Iran. And in 1979, the Iranian people rose up, the Islamic Republic, and they took the oil resources of Iran for themselves. They said that no more would the oil, the natural resource of Iran, belong to Western corporations, but it would belong to the people of Iran. And it seems that there's been hostility sent to Iran ever since that date. The U.S. wants that oil for Shell and BP and other U.S. corporations, and that's unacceptable. But that's motivated all this hostility and aggression.
Last Thursday, the IAEA said Iran cut its most sensitive nuclear stockpile by 75% and delayed construction of a key plant. Is the Obama administration just not recognizing the progress?
Well, again, Iran has made so many efforts to open up to the United States, to offer to give what it can in order to restore friendship and cooperation between the two countries. But the response has been aggression. I mean, Iran has no intention of developing nuclear weapons. It's made clear its only intention is to develop peaceful nuclear energy. These talks have proceeded on that basis, about trying to accommodate the U.S., but it seems that over the last couple of weeks we've seen that the U.S. has no interest in bettering the relation between the two countries. And that's particularly tragic. It's particularly tragic to see that the hostility between the U.S. and Iran continues to persist.
How much could this current dispute impede nuclear talks?
Well, it's very clear that certain interests in the United States, whether they be the big oil corporations, whether they be certain Wall Street banking institutions, and specifically, the Israeli and the Zionist entities, they are clearly devoted to attacking Iran, to engaging in hostility against Iran. But the people of the world don't agree with them. The overwhelming majority of the people in the United States and the people all over the world, they want peace. They want cooperation between countries, and they don't want this hostility and this aggression. So the question is whether the will of the people and their desire for peace will prevail, or whether the will of banking institutions that make profits from war and aggression will prevail, because it's clear the people of the world don't want war and aggression and hostility. They want peace.